I'm really happy to report we've got some 70 CJP members now participating in our FOCA program where we gather flight data. We've aggregated some 8,500 flights now, and we're learning some really great things. And one of the key learnings to this point is how we're doing on our visual approaches. We're finding that sometimes we're getting high and tight on base turns, leading to high sink rates. And there's a lot of good things we can take away from that. And today, we've got CJP member Arnie Evdokima with us to reenact that. Let's take a look.
November 163 Mike, cleared for the visual, runway 13 Hutchinson.
Cleared the visual 13 Hutchinson, 160 Mike. Okay, where's that runway now? It's over there. Okay, I better get configured here, get the gear down. A little hot, flaps coming in. This looks doable. Power to idle. 3 in the green, flaps good, configured. It's gonna be a little tight. I can do this, I think.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
Yeah, I don't know if this is gonna work.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
Tower 160 Mike going around.
163 Mike, roger. Executing this approach in our left downwind.
Glide slow.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
So Arnie did a nice job of going around from really an awkward position that was too high, too tight, too great a sink rate, and when he got the right cues, he took it around. So let's take a look at some of the things we could do with the setups and then how we would fly that, referencing the MFD and then setting up our flight guidance system so we have a good backup from the FMS for that approach. Whether it's Garmin or Collins, there are techniques that are applicable to both, using the MFD as a situational awareness tool to get yourself aligned on final. The objective being that we're never really more than 1,000 feet per minute in the descent rate, all the way around from a position like we're at right here on a very long extended base, setting ourselves up on final. Some of the challenges are when you're in this position on a visual and you can't get a real good hack on when should you start down. Tendency is to start down late and being high and tight, and then that leads to the high sink rate. So let's take a look at our SOPs and how that helps us. This is an image of a generic airport runway. We'll use this end of the runway for purposes of discussion. This will be our threshold, landing in this direction to the northeast. A typical light aircraft pattern would put the downwind about 3/4 of a mile spacing from the runway and a base turn that's about a mile from the threshold. And if we try to fly that kind of pattern, we'll have those high sink rates. We just have a faster airplane with bigger turn radius that doesn't allow for this. So what we recommend in the CJP SOPs that we can see will prevent us from getting into those instabilities in a visual would be to make sure we space ourselves no closer than 1.5 miles on the downwind and 2.5 miles for the base leg from the threshold. But ideally, we want to be a little wider than that. Ideally is a 2-mile spacing on the downwind and a 3-mile base. These two parameters, 1.5 to 2 and 2.5 to 3, will ensure that we can handle a 20+ knot tailwind on the base without overshooting, and it will ensure that we won't see more than 1,000 feet per minute descent rate on that base turn. And then rolling out on final or making the base spacing to the threshold 2.5 to 3 miles will also allow us to be in that stable approach gate above a 500-foot point and no more than 750 feet a minute on that 3-degree glide path. So the tighter the pattern, the more you will increase the instability. So let's take a look at how that might help us with a visual approach. So the Garmin and the Proline are a little bit different, but they both offer the ability to do a visual approach. So I'm going to load a visual approach, but I'm going to ask for a 3-mile base like our SOPs. So we'll do depart arrive, and we'll go ahead and do runway 13 visual. I'm going to change it to a 3-mile base, and then we've got the 3-mile base here, and I'm going to do a direct to that extension and execute it. And that's one way to fly it. Another way would be to do a direct to that extended point and change my inbound to a 220 and create a 90-degree base turn. And then it looks like that. And then the last thing I can do is put a circle around my runway. So runway, in this case 13, and we want a 3-mile circle for reference. Put that in there, and I'm ready to fly my references off the MFD. Hutch to tower, 163 Mike. We're approximately 10 miles to the southwest, looking for a visual to 13.
November 163 Mike, roger. Proceed to Hutchinson Airport. 3-mile base is approved. You're cleared for the visual approach to runway 13.
Copy, cleared the visual 13 from a 3-mile base. Thanks, 163 Mike. So at that point I can even put us into approach mode and start down per the snowflake. Now I've got some vertical guidance to help me with my approach into the runway. We'll go ahead and get our approach flaps. We'll get our landing gear here in just a minute. Nice pacing. Showing 5 miles on the diagonal from the runway. Probably a good time to go ahead and get our gear. I'm even going to scale this down some more for situational awareness. You can see the snowflakes starting to come down to give us some vertical guidance. Below 161, we'll get our final flap. So now we're 1,500 feet above the field on a base leg, 3 miles to the final approach. We got our gear, we got our flaps full, landing lights are on. We're good to go. Coming into our approach speeds. Dial our altitude down to the runway. VNAV so we can follow the path. And here it comes. We do have visual, everything looks good, looking for traffic. Coming in on speed. My personal preference at this point, as it anticipates a base to final turn, is I'd come off the autopilot and just fly it hand flown in from here. You can do hand flown absolutely on a visual from any point, but once we had our situational awareness set up to avoid those high sync rates, the rest of this looks pretty straightforward.
November 163 Mike is cleared to land. Wind is calm.
Clear to land, copy the winds, 163 Mike. Nice situational awareness there, looks like out the window. One more check gear, flaps. Coming up on our 500-foot gate. Looks good. Looking for the pappies. 500 feet, we're stable. Oh my gosh, you never know who's entering the pattern. You got to keep a lookout these days all the time. I want to thank Arnie for all his work in helping us put together this production. What you've seen today is some new SOPs from us at CJP that can help you with visual approaches. And we're now working in coordination with flight safety to create some scenarios that will help you get more and more comfortable with how to set up those visual approaches. It'll be in our Safe to Land 2.0. Be a lot like the scenarios we put in for the straight-in approaches in 1.0. I think you're going to love it.
Well, flying a visual approach is certainly one of the higher risk areas of flight. Thanks, Arnie. Thanks, Charlie, for some great tips. And I know next time you go in the visual pattern, think about those CJP SOPs. Think about all the available data you have in your cockpit to help you fly safer. Until next time, Fly safe and check 6.